Welcome to Real Talk, Indiana's premier talk show on real estate investing, where we talk each week about investing your money right here in Central Indiana. The tips, tricks, do's, and don'ts, brought to you by CIREIA, Central Indiana's oldest and largest real estate investing association. Hello there. My name is Vicki Perry, and I'm the Executive Director of CIREIA. We have over 600 members, all active in or learning how to be active in real estate here in the Indiana market. This radio show is available on FM 95.9, AM 950, podcast on YouTube, and www.cireia.org. Join us each week as we talk about how you can make your money more active with better returns and help the community that you live in with real estate done the right way. Now, on with the show.
Hello, my name is Ron Watson, and I am the board president for CIREIA, Central Indiana Real Estate Investors Association. Welcome to CIREIA's weekly show where we talk about investing in real estate the right way. Its ups, downs, rewards, and financial gains. We are the largest and oldest nonprofit real estate investment group in the state and the only chapter of National REIA in Central Indiana. Our goal is to help you understand the options and opportunities in real estate investing. Whether you have a lot of time to invest, minimal time, lots of funds, or very little money. Last week, we talked about buying and selling houses via auction with Tom Mascari. If you missed that episode, you can listen on the CIREIA YouTube channel or tune in to our website, www.cireia.org, via the calendar of events. Joining us again today is one of the most respected real estate rehabbers and investors in Indiana, Dave Short. Dave is a broker realtor with Century 21 Sheets. He does 35 to 50 flips a year. He runs the CIREIA subgroup for rehabbing and is one of our mentors and co-owner of Perfect Launch Mentoring. Welcome, Dave.
It's great to be here. I'm looking forward to our interview today with Sterling.
And also joining us is Sterling Davis, broker and owner of Ethosity Property Management. If you're interested in owning rental properties but don't want the headaches of 2 a.m. phone calls, consider hiring a professional manager. You still build the value in the asset but don't have to deal with the tenants and property problems. That's what you do, right, Sterling?
That is what I do. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for having me.
So, Sterling, let's start with a little bit of your background. What is your experience with real estate investing?
Yeah, so thank you, like I said, for being here. I've been in this for 7 to 8 years now. I kind of fell into it. I'm a second-generation real estate broker. My parents been doing it for 30 years, and I was like, most people, my parents are like, oh, you need to get in this business. And I was like, I'm not doing anything that my parents tell me to do. That is not what I'm going to do. With just...
How'd that work out for you?
Yeah. Parents always know best. So I kind of fell into it. I sold off one of my companies. I failed in one. So I needed something to do with my time. And we started a maintenance company called Nationwide Facility Maintenance. 2009, 2010 happened. A lot of big box stores stopped paying us, basically. So I couldn't pay my bills. So I had to pivot. Life is always about pivots. So we pivoted and we started doing residential maintenance and things like that for investors. One of the investors I sat down with, he was like, Sterling, if you just take this and give it back to me once the tenant is in there, that would be great. I was like, oh, yeah, that's great. I'll do that. And we started doing probably 10 to 15 in a month. And I was like, oh, man, this is awesome. And then I started slowly realizing that no longer are we Nationwide Facility Maintenance. We were more of a property management company. So we went through a branding about 4 years ago that became Ethosity Property Management, what we are today, which focuses on residential and small multifamily property management.
Where'd you get the name Ethosity?
Great question. So I paid a lot of money for it, Dave. No. So we sat down with our branding guy, and he went over what our values were. And I really stuck out to me because of it comes and derives from ethos, which means the heart of. And we're kind of consider ourselves the heart of the community. I grew up in an urban area with poverty all around me. So it's really important that we understand that we are trying to enhance the quality of life for our community. And that's what we strive to do every day.
Cool.
So, Sterling, let me ask you, now, actually, I forgot to mention that Sterling is actually the vice president of the board of directors of CIREIA, so we're really happy to have you here in that capacity as well.
Thank you. Ron's right-hand man.
So tell me, can anybody manage properties in Indiana, and what's required? Is there training? I mean, can you go through that process for us a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the better question, why would you want to manage properties in Indiana? Because landlording is hard, right? It's a lot that goes on in landlording. So the answer is yes. You can manage properties in it. License law, how it reads, if you have less than 4 houses, and you're an owner and a landlord, you don't have to abide by certain fair housing laws and stuff like that. For us as a property management business, we have our real estate license. We are affiliated with other organizations like CIREIA. We're affiliated with other organizations called NARPM, which is a National Association of Residential Property Managers as well. So the answer is yes, you can manage properties, but it's important that you are licensed just to protect yourself and you're insured.
I'm actually a landlord myself, and I can kind of relate. There's a lot of people out there that are probably thinking about buying real estate in some capacity. Maybe they want to be a landlord, but they don't necessarily have the time to manage those properties, and I don't necessarily either. So I can relate to that. So what are some advantages to bringing somebody like yourself on to help manage properties?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a big proponent of Gary Keller, the owner of Keller Williams, talks about your one thing, right? So I'm a huge proponent of having your one thing, something that you focus on. And for some people that are in our investor partners, their one thing is running another business. Some of our investor partners focuses on flips and holds. So it's important for you to focus on that one thing so people like us at Ethosity can make sure that your asset is protected and ran correctly. So our ultimate goal is to get your goal and make sure we accomplish your goal. It's a lot of laws that are changing. It's a lot of tenants and landlords, relationships that are all about building. So I think at the end of the day, property managers, third-party property managers can be an asset. A lot of times people look at it as a vendor and owner relationship, but I look at it as a partnership. And if you understand it as a partnership, this thing can be a great relationship for everyone that's in part of it.
Well, I can make a couple comments on that. I would probably still be in the rental business if I'd had a guy like Sterling running my property. At one point, we had 100 single-family houses that my wife managed, and when I came home one night and saw her sitting in a chair crying and said, "I'm going to work for McDonald's. I'm not doing this anymore." We decided we had to get out of it because we didn't have the vehicle to have it properly managed. I'll make a comment to you, and I'd like for you to comment on it too, is that I've always told students and people we train on real estate that the real estate is the vehicle.
Right.
And I can't stress so much to our viewers that management is the key to the success of that vehicle. So
yeah, amen to that. I talk about when I train and I partner with my investor partners. I talk about something we call the cycle of suck, and it's so true, right? It's the cycle that starts with you have an owner that wants to get in, and he's probably a good guy and he has some money, or she's a good gal and she has a lot of money and she wants to invest in real estate, and she comes to a broker and she says, "I want to invest in real estate," and that person acquires a house with minimum analyzing and due diligence, and then they're like, "We're going to manage it ourselves, Dave or Ron, I'm going to manage it ourselves, I can do this," and then they get a bad tenant in there. And that bad tenant just destroys the house, right? And then that bad tenant doesn't want to leave. So now it's just costing you and racking up money. So then that bad tenant goes on and they go write a review about the investor or the company. And now it's this cycle of suck, right? Where what we try to do is try to call it a cycle of success, is what we call it in our CIREIA business management class. A cycle of success where we get a good owner that is willing to put money into their property, and we analyze and we do our due diligence, and then we get a good home. after we get a good home, we put a great tenant in there because we analyze, we make sure we do the screening, and we have a whole process for that. And then after we put a great tenant in there that's going to pay their bills and stuff like that historically, they have a great experience. And they write reviews. If you look at our Google page and things like that, they write positive reviews because they had positive experience. And then that becomes the cycle of success.
Well, Sterling, I know we've got a lot more questions for you. And I personally, as a landlord, some of the things that are troublesome for me, I want to ask you about because I'm sure you can help me. But just one quick thing before we take a break. One of the things we always are challenged with is finding tenants for these properties, right? So
Absolutely.
How do you help a investor get a tenant into a property?
Yeah, so I think you have to have a plan, right? And you have to work your plan. What we do is we do the nationwide background check. We run their criminal, financial, residential, did I say land? We look at their past places that they stayed, and we kind of evaluate them on that. Also, we have a interview with them that kind of gets our feel of who this person is and what they're looking for, and try to meet their needs. We can go in depth with how we try to educate them because we feel like that a better tenant is an educated tenant, and how we take them through their house to understand what their responsibilities are versus our responsibilities. But for the most, we take them from start to finish on getting them screened and getting them moved into our house.
So I've got some questions I wanted to ask you after our break here, including what do we do with those 2 a.m. phone calls, and do I have to deal with them if you're working for me? But we're going to be back in just a minute and with more with Sterling Davis, including putting you on the hot seat and also getting a tip of the week from you right after this break. Welcome back to Real Talk. I am Ron Watson, president of the board of directors of CIREIA. And today we're talking to Sterling Davis, owner of Athosity Property Management. Also joining me is rehabber, investing coach, and local legend, Dave Short. So I asked you before the break, Sterling. It's absolutely true. But I was asking before the break, as a landlord, I've had these. And it's those 2 a.m. phone calls, probably what drove Dave's wife to want to work at McDonald's. But what do I have to worry about that if I have a property manager?
No, you don't have to worry about that. You have me and my team take care of that. We have a call center that takes anywhere from 24-hour maintenance calls. We have a call center that takes specifically our leasing calls and our customer service calls. So we are your extension of your business, so that you can focus on what you want to focus on. My number one thing that I ask people when they come on board with us as investor partners, I ask them, what is your goal? Like, what do you want to do? Let's get you to doing what you want to do, so that we can do what we want to do, which is manage properties. This is weirdly fun to us, I guess.
What kind of training do you have to do to be a property manager?
Yeah. So you have to sit on a phone call with people just cussing at you for like 24 hours straight. And that just prepares you the way.
I'm ready. I've done that.
Yeah, exactly, right? So, no. So it starts with getting your real estate license, right? We're a big proponent of, being certified. The next step is getting certified with NARPM, which is a residential property management affiliate that does a great training and programs for it on our team. All of our property managers go through that training, and it prepares them to be able to deal with all aspects of what property management and landlording is, from the law to the ethics, which is really important, as we know, and just being able to communicate properly.
Are the laws changing? Have they been this way for 10 years? Or
Yeah. Every day we see the laws changing. I think it's important that we bring that up. That is a great question. The laws are changing. I mean, you see anything from the landlord register, which if you're not on top of it, you wouldn't know, right? So we spend a good deal every week just going over the laws, and they're changing, how they're affecting us, how they affect us on the real estate brokerage side, how they affect us on the property management side, what is making sure that we're protected and we're not violating fair housing. It was important at one point. when we had our company, we had our operations manager would approve and disapprove, disapprove, would turn down the tenants for us. And I was like, that is kind of a conflict of interest, right? You know, we want to make sure that you have no bias on these people. So what we did is now we have a organization that helps us with our approval of tenants, and when we don't approve, we just know that they didn't fit this criteria specifically. A lot of landlords can easily fall victim to it. I mean, I have a short story. One of my colleagues, who is one of our investor partners, he came to me and said, "Sterling, I want you to rent out my property." I said, "Great, I'll rent out your property." I rented it out in like a week, and I got four college students, right? And I was like, "Oh, this is what it is." And we're just talking as friends, and I said, "Hey, I have these people, they're college students, they're going to move in." He said, "Oh man, I don't want college students in my house because wear and tear." And initially I was like, he's right. That makes sense. Wear and tear on his house. He was like, "How about this, Sterling? We're going to charge them $600 each instead of charging them $1,500. And I went back and I started talking to my team, and they were like, "Wait a minute, that violates fair housing," because it can easily be perceived that we're doing it because of their age. And I said, "You know what? That's just how easy we can violate fair housing and not even realize it." My investor partner didn't mean anything bad by it, but he just violated it by trying to turn down these people.
Yeah, so kind of along those lines, that one of the things that we always struggled with is the lease, right? So that's also a legal document.
Absolutely.
And as a landlord, and if you're just getting started and you want to get some tenants in your property, do you help provide a lease? Do you put a lease together? And what can you tell people about that?
Yeah, so each investor is a little bit different. So we have packages that fit each investor specifically for their needs, right? And one of those is just lease option, where we get the tenant, we approve the tenant for them, and then we give them our lease. Our lease has been year by year. We always have our lawyer look over it, make sure everything's in there. The funny thing is now more than ever, we turn over houses and we inherit tenants, and we get people's lease. And what you see, people are able to go online and just pull pieces from other websites. And last week I saw one that said Colorado, and I was like, I think you got that from the wrong website. So I think you have to be very careful, and you have to allow the professionals to do what the professionals does.
Yeah, I mean that always kind of scared me, is that we put all these really cool things in our lease. I don't know if they're legal or not, but they're in there. So
right.
No. Well, one of the things is just why you need a guy like Sterling. I'll tell one of the quick horror stories I had on one of my rental properties. I got it fixed up. I was short on cash. I really needed the cash flow in this house. Young couple, so although we'll take really good care of it. So I leased it to them at 5 o'clock. And I got a call the next morning from the next door neighbor. And he says, "Your new tenants shot up a car in the driveway that they had just put there." And they had to call the police. They came and left, so I went over there immediately. And I go in there. They had painted the inside of my house black, and they were snake worshipers. This is a 24-hour story.
Wow!
It's like, I'm assuming
now
if I use you, if I assume I use you, I'm not going to have that, right?
Right. Well, we might still have the snake worshipers, but at least they won't shoot up the house.
Yeah, I mean, I watched Breaking Bad, right, and that's always been my fear as a landlord, that I'd get those kind of phone calls, and it would be, they're cooking meth in your house.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a concern. And as a new investor, you don't want to have to deal with that, right?
No. And to say that it won't happen, that might put off the bad perception that we're gods and we can prevent everything. But we are training our people to know how to deal with these things and to stay up on these things. So I think it's important to understand. I mean, I've had a guy yesterday called me and said he was going to break my legs. I'm like, what? All I wanted to see is your furnace fixed. And, he said he'd break my legs.
Well, so that's one thing I've always wondered about for property managers, and maybe if you're a new investor, you might wonder the same thing, and that is, can I come to you and work with you if I just have one property, or do I need to have 10, or what's kind of the mix of your clients? Do you see a variety there?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do see a variety in our clientele because, like I said before, all of our clients are different. So we have packages that fit every one of them. It's not a one size fit all. So we try to make sure that we really go on in the beginning to learn what they're looking for, their growth model, their out, how they want to get out of the house. They want to liquefy, be able to liquidate at any point. All those things matter to us. So if you have one house, or you have 4 houses, or you have 20 houses, it doesn't matter to us. We just want to make sure that we accomplish your goals.
We talk about it a little bit. We'll touch on fees on it. Is like most people, property manager is too expensive. And I think, my opinion is, and I'll let you address it, is they're too expensive not to have.
Absolutely. I mean, so, we'll touch on it. I was an investor before I was a property manager. So I held real estate before I started getting into property management. I was frustrated with the options at property management, to be honest. I just never liked how the 10% and all those things really worked. So that's why I jumped in it. I was like, it's a better way to be able to accomplish the goals as an investor. And as you said, it costs you. If you don't have a great property manager, or if you're trying to do it yourself, it can cost you from delayed rents. So if you have a long vacancy that's 2-3 months, that can cost you so much that you need to sell the house, right? Not everyone has that ability. So
do you take? We talked a little bit about some of the things that can come up. I know the extreme examples of like a meth house, but the things that happen on a regular basis are things like, hey, my toilet stopped up, or I can't get my sink to drain, or the refrigerator's not working. I mean, are those the types of things that you also take care of for your clients?
Absolutely, yeah. So we have, like I said, a call center, a 888 number that all of our tenants can call. And 24 hours. We also give them a portal where they can, when they're paying their rent, they can put their maintenance items in there, and we take care of it. So yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things that we pride ourselves on. Maintenance is things that as investors we don't make money on, but it's the number one thing that people get dinged for in license law. The number one thing that you go look on somebody's review sites on Google or Yelp saying, this person let me live in my house and it has mold, right? Or these maintenance issues. So it's important that we address them, and we address them quickly. And that's why we're here for the investors.
Well, so you talked about an important issue there that we really haven't gotten to yet, and that is actually the rent, right? So that's, I'm assuming the main reason for me it is that I have rental properties is so I can collect rent. Is that something that you take care of for your clients as well, and how does that work?
Oh, absolutely. I tell people this all the time, and I don't think people understand that it's true until you get in it, right? We touch our tenants throughout the month 4 to 5 to 6 times a month, right? And if we didn't do that, the tenants will say, well, they must not want my rent money. But naturally we think, oh, they know that they owe rent. Why wouldn't they just pay me? So it's important that we touch them on the 1st, we touch them on the 3rd, we touch them on the 5th, we touch them on the 10th. We just walk their house just to change some filters. We build a relationship with them so that it's not just this big company that is managing my property, but it's a person. It's Sterling.
So we're speaking with Sterling Davis from Ethosity Property Management, and joining me is also Dave Short. And we have a lot more questions for you coming up in just a minute, Sterling, including we're going to put you on the hot seat. Everybody looks forward to that segment, and we're also going to have a tip of the week. But we'll get to that and much more right after this break. Welcome back to Real Talk. I am Ron Watson, president of the board of directors of CIREIA, and today we're speaking with Sterling Davis, owner of Ethosity Property Management, and also joining me is rehabber and investing coach Dave Short.
Sterling, I wanted to touch on before I ask you the next question. You said something that I want all people who are landlords or maybe want to be landlords. What you said is that you touch these people 3 to 5 times a month. I can't tell you how awesome that is from a business perspective. When I was a landlord, if I touched them once every 90 days, I touched them a lot, and it was always a negative touch.
Absolutely.
So, and then taking that, so you can expand on that a little bit more, and tell me, how many properties do you manage? What's your capacity,
Yeah, so we're kind of in our growth mode right now. So we manage just over 450 properties right now. We are in the middle of acquiring another 100, so we'll be at 550. We're really hitting the ground moving right now, and I'm really excited for it. And I think it really comes from, we don't do any advertisements. We're not on Facebook, but it comes from referrals. We really want to cater to our investors, and we want them to be satisfied. That cycle of suck and that cycle of success is so important to our business model. So we want to make sure that success happens for our investors.
How many, on 450 properties, which seems like a lot to me, what kind of vacancy would a company like you run versus another company?
Yeah. So we do a great job keeping our vacancy low and our occupancy high. Right now in our residential side, we're at 99% from the last 6 months. We have a lot of different ways we go about that, from marking the property on the market. When we get a notice 60 days out, we start the marketing immediately, so that it's not that long of a break between owners not getting their rent and the person moving out. So we want to make sure we, as much as possible, cut that time down, so your revenue is 12 months of revenue.
Are you only doing high-end houses to keep that kind of
No. We actually are working in all different demographics. I would say predominantly we're in improving neighborhoods. So urban improving neighborhoods is our target market, just because of the approach that our investors take.
What kind of average rent do you have on your 450 properties?
Yeah, so our average rent right now is about $7.99. We kind of fit in that wheelhouse that allows us to be able to get tenants in there, great tenants that are working, trying to improve their lives and stuff like that, and investors are able to reap the benefit.
Cool.
You talked about touching the clients or the tenants multiple times a month. How do you do that? Is there different ways that you manage that?
Yeah, so one of the major ways that we go about touching our tenants is, everyone's different, right? How they come about being able to receive information. So we text them, we call them, and I show up at their door as well. Sometimes people just like the relationship of talking to me. And I have one guy that he each month he says, "Sterling, my money order is on my kitchen counter. You just have to stop by and get it." And I'm like, "You're really messing up my process here, but if that's what it takes, I'll do it." So I think it's important, to make sure that we're touching the tenant, as well as that we're maximizing the return on the investment for the investor. We do that in multiple ways, just to make sure that that we're not just looking at rents and things like that. So
you're humanizing the process.
Absolutely. Relationships is way more important than money and houses and assets and things like that.
So you mentioned that idea. It's kind of intriguing. We talked about this a little bit at the break, maximizing the return on investment for your investors. And what are some of the things that you're doing to make that happen?
Yeah, great question. I mean, so we a lot of times when landlords or holders look at the idea of holding real estate, they look at the rent. They say the rent is this much. How much can I increase the rents? We kind of take that approach and we take it a step further, just to make sure that we are maximizing the return on everything inside the house. Every neighborhood is different. In some neighborhoods in urban areas where the rents are $600 a month, what we find is they don't want necessarily or need appliances, but they're the same people that are using Rent-A-Center. They're the same people that are using that type of model. So we mirror that model inside of how we manage the property. So if it's an appliance, if it's different things like that, we rent those to them instead of just giving them to them. Another thing that I find that a lot of landlords miss when we go through the due diligence and we go through their profit and loss is things like sewer and water and things like that, they normally just eat those costs. And that's insane to me. Like, you're eating sewer and water, which can vary from $25 a month to $80 a month. And the tenant doesn't really know. They're just using all the water. So I think it's so important that we kind of charge that back. And that's, $65 more a month as a landlord that or investor that you're going to be having. That's not your rents.
Is that a kind of a standard? Are a lot of management companies going to that process? I've heard about it, but I haven't seen it in action.
Yeah, so a lot of other management companies just manage your asset. They just kind of take a preventative approach, and they're like, hey, I'm going to manage your asset. But we really look at looking at how we can improve your asset. So when we touch your asset, we want to make sure that we increase your revenue and limit your expenses, and then we take advantage of all that we can.
That's interesting because you mentioned a 99% occupancy, right, which is amazing. And I'm wondering if your tenants are getting all this other value-added services related to their lease, right, that they may not get with other people. Is that contributing to that high occupancy rate?
I would say so. I mean, if you go look on our online reviews and things like that, a lot of it comes from our tenants. I want our owners to go in there, but our tenants are the ones that, and we don't even solicit our tenants to go do reviews. That's just something that they feel moved enough to go do a review. And I'm like, oh man, that's perfect and great. So I think it's really important to have not just owner satisfaction, but tenant satisfaction, as well as vendor satisfaction. And that's how you really enhance the quality of our community.
Give us a couple, just kind of kick back. I'm always big into stories. I know you have to have stories. What's the worst call you've got in your call center at 2 a.m. that maybe not the funniest? That's
Yeah. We had a call one time. It was we were managing an apartment. Apartments are a lot different than anything else. And this guy calls and he says, my sink is broken and I can't seem to stop the water from pouring out. And I go, well, all right. The call center calls me, and we had to send a vendor. And the vendor gets out there, and he was like, Sterling, I think you need to come take a look at this. So 3 o'clock in the morning, I get my clothes on. I kiss my wife and tell her I got to hit the road. And I get there, and the guy and his spouse must have been fighting. Because it's like a shoe in the sink. It's like the glass on the mirror was like smashed over someone's head, and he's like bleeding. And I'm like, how did this happen? He's like, I ran in here and I tripped. I'm like, I don't think you would have this, and I don't think. I'm like, I became instantly like a CSI detective. I was like, I'm going to solve this.
Yeah, it kind of seems like you walked into a crime scene there.
Exactly.
I mean, is that typical though? I mean, as a potential landlord, I know you're taking care of those problems, which is great, but I know it's a fear for a lot of landlords is do I have this kind of thing happening on a regular basis?
Yeah, so I think that's important, when we evaluate our cycle of suck, right? It's important that we acquire it right. And we understand in our due diligence period that we are identifying these things and we have a plan for them if they need to be taken care of. For example, if you know that you have a roof that's 15, 20 years old, you can't be mad when it starts leaking. If you have an HVAC system that's been there since the 60s and it goes out, it's important that we understand and identify those initially before you even purchase the house. Because I don't care if you have a property manager or anyone, that's going to go out. That's just, God.
That's just being prepared, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
This another question that I've got, in having been an owner and a landlord, tell me, who's your biggest problem, the tenant or the landlord?
Before you answer that, Sterling, that sounds like a great thing to come back to after the break. And so that's Sterling Davis. Is a great question from Dave Short, and we're going to put you on the hot seat when we get back, and you can answer that question and a few more. And welcome back. This is Ron Watson again with the Real Talk radio show. We're speaking with Sterling Davis, owner of Athosity Property Management. And before we went to the break, Sterling, we asked you about what gives you more trouble, your tenants or your property managers or the actual landlords themselves?
Yeah, great question. I think it depends on who you ask in my office, right? The people that deal with our tenants, they would probably say our landlords. The people that deal with our landlords would probably say our tenants. So I think it's really important that we put people in place to fit their needs and their wants, right? So we do the same thing with our team. Melissa, who's over our operation, that deals a lot with our owners and things like that. She loves our owners, but she wasn't suited to fit to work with our tenants as much. And then vice versa, we have a young lady that works with our tenants. She loves our tenants. They have relationships. They just love each other. But she's not equipped to work with with our owners. So I think it's important to have people on your team that focus on what they're great at.
Good. I want to touch base on the other side or other income stream that you have. It's called the acquisition, and also touch on what we call turnkey, where most people don't understand that term.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. So it kind of came from our cycle of suck. What we saw people do, we started with our property management, and we really honed in on our processes. But we kept on finding that people were just buying wrong. And when I say buying wrong, they really didn't understand what they were buying. They just didn't have enough information. They didn't know what questions to ask, and they were working with people in the traditional sense of real estate and brokerages. And it's nothing wrong with them, but I think you have to focus on what you're great at, right? So it's an easy transition for us to be able to add on people like Dominique Berry, who's over our acquisition team and who helps our investor partners acquire and find, analyze, and acquire the best property for their whole experience. When you start talking about now that, you start talking and looking at turnkeys and why those are cool for people, because at the end of the day,
define turnkey before you expand on it a little bit.
So at the end of the day, what a turnkey is somebody did all the stuff in the beginning, right? They put in the new appliances, they put in the new furnaces, and they also place the tenant for you. And then at the end, you acquire a turnkey property. All you have to do at this point is put your money down, acquire the home, and you get reap the benefits of someone doing all that for you almost. And I think it's an excellent opportunity for people because a lot of people want to focus on what they're great at. And if you don't want to go through the experience of finding that tenant or the experience of having to put in a new furnace in the beginning, and you just want to find a turnkey property that you can drive off the car lot with, it's important.
Is that a good deal?
I think it depends on who you're asking. I think every owner that we work with are so different. So we try to focus on specifically what they're looking for. Some of our owners want to build the house. Some of our owners want to move in right when the house is done. And then some of them want to do turnkeys. So I think for us, a lot of our investors that we work with start in the beginning with building the house almost, like in rehabbing the house and getting it too.
Okay, so do you help them with that rehab process? Absolutely.
So we have a rehab team that I acquired. I acquired a company a couple months ago that does all of our rehabs. It's so hard with finding good work. If you're an investor, one of the hardest things is actually finding good contractors. So I found a good contractor that I've been working with for years. I said, you know what? I'm keeping you, and I don't want anybody else to make you busy. So I acquired his company, and now my investors are reaping the benefits of that acquisition.
Cool.
Well, that's interesting. From CIREIA's perspective, which I know as a board member, you spend a lot of time and effort in networking with the CIREIA members. We see a lot of different ways for people to get involved in real estate investing, and so it's interesting that you have maybe somebody that wants to be a more hands-on landlord, but then you've also got this turnkey approach, right? So you
Absolutely.
see a wide range of possibilities for somebody getting involved in the process. And is that something that when you see a new investor at CIREIA, those are the type of things that they're asking you about? Or
Yeah. CIREIA is great. I mean, CIREIA, you get so many cool people that you just learn about in different backgrounds. So as much as I give to CIREIA gets to me as well. And that's why when I have my booth at the monthly meetings or we do our subgroup, I just love, and Ron and Dave know I could talk all day. So the questions that they ask are always just so stimulating. But it also comes from a place that it's real, right? Sometimes we forget as vendors to these investors, our partners to these investors, that this is someone's livelihood. You know, they might only have $20,000, and this $20,000 is so important that they make this right. So we don't take that lightly here at Ethosity Property Management.
You mentioned something that some people may not know if they haven't been to CIREIA before, which is the subgroup, and you're a subgroup leader. Can you talk a little bit about what that is and what you talk about during your subgroup?
Yeah, absolutely. So with CIREIA membership, you have the opportunity to be able to go to what we call a subgroup throughout the month. There's different opportunities that you can network and learn. It's a smaller setting than our main meeting. So people like Dave have is it dinner and deals?
Yes.
So we have that, and my subgroup, which is a business management. So it's a lot of business owners that come and just nag and talk about all the bad stuff that happens in business. No, I'm just like no, but iron sharpens iron. So that's what we focus on.
In terms of what kind of relationship you have with your clients, are there long-term commitments? If I sign up with you, do I have to stick with you for 5 years, or how does that work?
No. So that's a great question, because all of our contracts are month to month. If you don't like me and I don't like you, we shouldn't work together, and I shouldn't have to bound you to a contract, right? So I never believed in that. You know, I think everything is such about a relationship business that I don't want to hold you hostage because of the contract.
So, Sterling, I know there's a lot more we could ask you about. I'd love to hear more stories about some of the things that go wrong, but we don't have enough time today. I want to make sure people have a way of reaching you. If they want to reach out to you, how can they find you?
Absolutely. So you can also go to our website. Our website is www.ethosity, which is ETHOSITY, PM. P is in property, M is in management.com. Also, I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, all those good things. You can find me at Sterling Davis. I look forward to connecting with people. Also, you can call our hotline, 888-212-3764.
And before we let you go, do you have a tip of the week for our listeners?
Yeah, I think it's what we talked about. The whole theme of this conversation is about focusing on your one thing. It's a book that focuses and talks about your 10,000 hours of learning. And it takes 10,000 hours to master something. So I think it's important, if you get in investing, figure out what your 10,000 hours are, and then leverage and outsource everything else. And that's what I find for success. So focus on your one thing. And kudos to Gary Keller for writing that book.
Great tip. One of my favorite books also.
Thank you, Sterling. I appreciate that. And this week at CIREIA, we have 4 subgroup meetings where we drill down on specific categories of investing. Your group, a specific group for investors interested in the south side of our market. Dave's group, Dinner and a Deal. Lee Smith's group, which is landlording. We also have a special event at the end of the month on Tuesday, March 27th. It's sponsored by Atlanta Mortgage and Longhorn Investments. And we'll have 2 sessions to learn about what you need to know when borrowing money for your investments. To find out more about our group and events, please visit www.cireia.org. And I wanted to thank Dave Short and Sterling for joining us this morning. And thank you for listening.